guys, welcome to Road Notes, where I'm taking you along with me on the journey of writing a novel. Come on! There's a famous quote attributed to William Faulkner that goes like this: "I only write when inspiration strikes. Fortunately, it strikes at 9 every morning." I'll be honest with you, as a young writer, I found that quote really annoying. I mean, inspiration, lightning bolt, has to strike, right? That's where genius comes from. Alone on the beach, wind in my hair, notebook jammed into my pocket, sun rising over the horizon, then bam! Inspiration, genius, story, novel, book deal. That thinking, I'll admit, while not exactly wrong, is at least a bit naive. I mean, who has time to drive to the beach whenever they want to write? And the Wi-Fi there is definitely spotty. Inspiration nowadays looks a bit different than it did back then, so I wanted to share a little bit of where inspiration has been coming from in these early days of writing this novel manuscript, and also just some thoughts that I've been having about that whole process of what we would call inspiration. The story I'm working on right now is a novel featuring a U.S. Marshal named Deadeye Dan Crowley. He's the fictional hero of a series of novels which Eugene Appleton, the main character of my novel, The Misadventured Summer of Tumbleweed Thompson, reads voraciously. I wrote a short story featuring Deadeye Dan in my collection Junction Tales, but I figured it was time for Deadeye Dan to get his own standalone book. And as I started combing through my pile of ideas, I was having more and more fun at figuring out what kind of story I wanted to tell involving Deadeye Dan. There's two kinds of inspiration. One is the big picture inspiration that leads to the ideas and the characters. For me, that inspiration can be captured by pursuing the answer to the question, what kind of story do I want to tell? What kind of people are interesting? What kind of situations are captivating? As an example, the first novel manuscript I ever wrote, where I learned about how to write a novel in the first place, was about basketball. And the inspiration, the lightning bolt, came when I was playing basketball in the driveway of my brother and sister-in-law's farmhouse on a summer vacation. Suddenly, the pieces were all there. I wanted to tell a story about a kid who loves basketball, much like 13-year-old me did, passionately, with a gym rat kind of love. I loved basketball, and I loved stories about young people finding out who they were. And so that became the story that I wanted to tell. So if you're a reader, a consumer of stories, step number one, I think, is to take stock of your tastes. What do you like? What lights you up inside? When you've taken the time to realize the kind of stories that you love, those can sometimes become the kinds of stories that you want to tell. And you can go about trying to discover how to uncover what makes it tick for you. So where did the inspiration for this novel and for Deadeye Dan come from? Adventure stories are always my wheelhouse. Stories that explore the out there, the unexplored, and involve discoveries that help the main characters learn more about themselves as they explore. So there's the Hardy Boys, there's Indiana Jones, of course the Lone Ranger, Tom Sawyer, even a little bit of MacGyver, all in Deadeye Dan. Inspiration form number one. But then there's the second form of inspiration, the day-to-day nuts and bolts type inspiration that has to arrive on a regular basis to sustain and drive forward the ongoing work of writing a novel. And that's the kind that I think, as much as I'm reluctant to admit it, that old Mr. Faulkner was talking about. It's the kind of inspiration that I once heard Jane Yolen call the BIC approach, butt in chair. You can only get inspired if you're in the middle of the journey and you're writing and your butt is in your chair. The good news about this form of inspiration is that it's the hibernating kind, the kind that lives deep inside, sleeping and swirling around in your subconscious. When you start writing a project like I am, each day of writing is accessing that deep, rich well of stories that lives inside of me. And then you get to work. You dig in. You discover, like I talked about last time. You enjoy and appreciate the twists and turns that your journey takes as you start writing. And as you write, you let down your bucket into that deep well of stories inside of you, and you start bringing up the water. Something happened this week that really set a fire to my writing and added to that deep reservoir of stories. We watched the first episode of the new season of The Mandalorian. a Star Wars universe set show on the Disney Plus streaming network. I've been plugging away with this first draft of Dead-Eye Dan, writing every day, and as I got started, partly because the story was new, and partly because it was a third-person omniscient narrative voice, and there was a bit of a struggle to find a tone, the kind of narrative voice. It felt clunky and uncertain, as first drafts often do, but something still felt a little off. But something about the story of the Mandalorian, this kind of lone figure flying around the galaxy trying to do justice wherever he can, sort of jarred something loose. And I don't think it was something that was brand new. In the process of diving back into the manuscript in the days since, things have just come a little bit more smoothly. Something about watching The Mandalorian reignited that love that I've always had with that lone adventurer, which is where the story of Dead-Eye Dan, I think, has its origins. So inspiration is definitely a mysterious, kind of tricky thing. It's like trying to catch smoke, and it definitely looks different for every project. But the good news is the kind of inspiration that's going to feed your stories is the kind that comes from the deep well inside of you. And you can draw up that water from the well every time you write, by serving the authentic voice inside of you and telling stories that flow from who you are as a reader and a writer and a human being. And I've found that this produces stories that are authentic and passionate and genuine. And that's the most important thing, I think.